So, welcome to the open air.
Yeah. Hi.
I'm Jeff. This is Elizabeth,
Hi.
and we're on the air.
Yeah. This is something new for us. We're trying out some different equipment. We're trying out some different
we're,
styles of recording.
we're spreading our wings.
A little bit, yeah.
So this is our open air video cast, and we're trying to bring a lot more of what we do to you, right? So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
audio, just to be able to have that conversation, be able to talk to you about what we do.
Right.
Because we do a lot of stuff with a lot of people, but not all the people all the time. And so it's harder to, when we do stuff with some people and then we do stuff with other people, it's getting harder to, oh yeah, you weren't there.
Right.
And you weren't there when we did this, so it's harder to categorize all those experiences.
Right.
And and I need to learn to stay close to my microphone, because if I'm back here, I sound like I'm in a cave, and if I'm up here,
right,
so,
we're using a different style microphone.
So bear with me.
Yes.
I'm learning. New microphone,
new microphone, new recording system, the headsets.
Right. You have to talk in your microphone.
Yes, I know. That's hard.
Right. So introductions. Like I said, I'm Jeff. This is Elizabeth, and I am the founder of Open Air. And I kind of wanted to start off. I have notes, so I'm looking at my notes. Oh, you can see them in the video, right?
Yeah,
I have notes right here.
No cheating. No cheating.
I'm copying, right? It got me through college. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of open air, how we got here, like where we're at today. And so it kind of all started out in 2014. I had the idea. I started hearing news, or even before that, in the early 2000s, I was hearing rumors. There was talk in the aviation industries about the shortage of pilots, the pending shortage of pilots, or the looming shortage of pilots that's coming in the next couple of decades, and this is now 20 years ago. So now it is the next couple, it's here, right?
Right.
And so, and when I would walk into so the EAA is Experimental Aircraft Association, and I've been a member of that organization, and I'd walk into the EAA meetings, and I was easily 20 years younger than everybody else in the room.
Yeah, right? I think I went to one of those meetings with you, and we literally were the youngest people there, right, besides our kids.
Yeah,
because we brought our kids.
Right, exactly. So and I'm a Gen Xer, right? So it was just an interesting dynamic. And so the one question that got posed to me often when I would go to aviation meetings of various types was, how do we get younger people involved? And so I really took that to heart. And I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of experimentation. And I've kind of, so there's no one real answer. There's lots of little answers depending on a number of circumstances and variables. But that's what I strive to do, and what I've brought into the Open Air organization is the whole point was to try to harness the youth and get the youth involved in what we do. So
right.
I started with my kids, and I started talking to schools. And my daughter used to love to be my helper, so she would hold up the poster. She would point, and do all the things, and so I would go talk to her class, and she did all the helping, and it was a really neat experience. And I did this several times over a course of a couple of years, and I started having parents and teachers come up to me afterwards and ask me. I've dubbed it now like the 20 frequently asked questions. What and kind of the 2-hour conversation where people ask, how much does it cost to learn to fly? When do you learn to fly? How old do you have to be? And lots of, where can you learn? what do you need? What if I have this? What if I have that? And so there's
Right.
just so many variables, and it kind of, I get caught in these rabbit holes all the time. So I set out to kind of solve that. Like I said, I've dubbed it the 2-hour conversation. How do I document or provide something so that people can get answers to those sort of things? So I wrote a book. I always kind of wanted to write a book, and I started to write a biography, but, as interesting as certain things in my life have been, I don't have, I don't think, such an overwhelmingly interesting life that it makes a compelling book, right? Like, I've got some really compelling short stories in my life, but so yeah, I started with an autobiography, and that didn't really work out. But then I'm like, I'm a really good flight instructor, and I really enjoy it. And so, look at her go. And so I'm like, and I love sharing this with people. So I wrote the book to inspire and encourage and to answer those 20 frequently asked questions for people when I can't have that 2-hour conversation. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'd love to answer your questions. You can go here and get the answer.
Right, right.
So that's kind of
and
what
I know we have the conversation all the time about how if aviation was as commonplace as driving, people wouldn't have all these questions because we all grow up around cars. We know how cars work. And so it's just second nature. If we grew up with airplanes the same way, we would all just like, oh yeah, that's how you go learn how to fly an airplane. That's how you get a license. That's how you do it at this age and this time and all these things. So I know we talk about that quite a bit.
Right. Well, and so part of the reason that I believe that there is a shortage of people to fill roles in aviation trades is because aviation is not taught in the public school system. Short of like a handful of schools across the country that have, public schools that have aviation programs. Des Moines, Iowa, our home state, actually their Central High School in Des Moines has an aviation program. And there's, like I said, a handful of them across the United States that have that. But otherwise, our local town, we live here in Pella, Iowa, or Pelicans. And
that's your favorite.
It is.
Really your favorite.
I do a lot of dad jokes. And so we don't have an aviation program in our local school. So, I do go and speak to, the kids and that sort of thing. So I published the book in 2017, initially, the first edition. And shortly thereafter in Lamoni, which is where Elizabeth is from, interestingly, I started the Lamoni Flight Club. I had a group of students. I was approached by the airport manager there and said, hey, he'd been giving a lot of people rides and talking to a lot of people, and he had a lot of people interested, but he was a pilot, but not a flight instructor. And he needed a flight instructor to come in to teach these people that he had been, giving rides to and inspiring and encouraging in aviation. And so I capitalized on the opportunity and went down and we started a flight club.
Yeah, that was loads of fun.
Yeah,
I think we had six student pilots at one point.
I started with about a dozen of people that were interested.
Yeah.
And then we had at the local pizza shack there. We'll give a shout out to James. He's welcome.
Yeah, Pizza Shack's our favorite.
But yeah, I had a dozen people that we met with at the local pizza shack, and I gave my little spiel about learning to fly. What's it cost? How they have to be? What's the time commitment and that sort of thing. And some people were there just as their information gathering, and they chose not to pursue it. Some were interested, but chose not to pursue it right now. They were going to do it later. Some started pursuing it and then decided that, it just how it always goes, right? So it sounded like a really interesting idea until they actually started doing it, and then wow, this is different than what they expected it to be, and so they decided to regroup and pursue a different route or do it another time, and that's fine. I don't push anybody I want to help, encourage, and inspire them. But if it doesn't work out for me, I will refer them to another flight instructor or to another program wherever would make the most sense for them and for what their needs are. So, and it worked out great. So we ended up with about 6 students there in the Lamoni Flight Club, and we had a blast. This is Mike.
Yeah.
So we all had
the call signs.
We all had call
Had the call
signs.
signs.
Yep, and
we had I was Mike, and then we had Crosswind.
we had Crosswind. Yep,
And Pretty.
so Pretty. Yes. So she was a college girl, and she was a tomboyish? Would that be a good descriptor?
Yeah, farm girl tomboy.
Yeah, and so she was learning to fly and everything else, and so she was kind of she would just hang with the guys and whatever, and she dressed in kind of athletic sports kind of attire, jeans and a t-shirt kind of thing, and a ball cap,
whatever,
that kind of thing. Like she said, farm girl. And one day there was an airplane coming in for landing or something, right?
Yeah. I don't even remember what it was, but the coloration was very unique, and it was very.
And she was sitting, striking. So we were all kind of sitting outside of the hangar, and we were just watching this airplane coming in, and so out of character for her, and she just goes, "Pretty."
It's so pretty.
And we were just like, "Wow."
Yep, that's your call sign now.
That was fun.
Yep.
So we had a lot of fun with it. The Lamoni Flight Club graduated 4 students out of there. So
yeah.
And lots and lots of stories, and we'll tell some of those as we get into these. I'm certain of it.
There's a lot to be told. Yes.
Yeah. So Elizabeth is also a pilot. I'm a flight instructor, if you hadn't deduced that already. And so, anyway, we started Lamoni Flight Club, and then I published the book in 2017. I started the Lamoni Flight Club in 2018, and then in 2019, I got a letter, and I won the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame Aviation Book of the Year award for my book. And the book was open air. And so we changed the Lamoni Flight Club then to the Open Air Flight Club, right? Like I merged the book and the flight club, and I'm like, well, let's bring all this together and keep the momentum going. And so that's really how the Open Air Flight Club came to be.
It's been a long and winding road.
Indeed.
Indeed.
So Elizabeth is about that time. I don't remember when exactly won that, but you got the 99 scholarship.
2018, October of 2018.
In 2018, yeah.
I got the 99's Amelia Earhart scholarship that helped me be able to pay for my flight training. And it was a really nice setup. It was one where they don't give you all the money right up front. They want you to work for it. So they would have you reach certain milestones, like fly your first solo, fly your first long cross country, things like that. And then they would reimburse you a certain dollar amount that they had set. And at the time I got that, I was already about halfway through all the milestones. So I only got about half of what the total amount I could have gotten was, but it was still super helpful, very instrumental in getting my flight rating.
Yeah, and that was a fantastic. So congratulations for that again.
And I got to go to the international convention in Dayton, Ohio.
Right, you were an honored guest,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So, that was really cool.
And that was at the National Air Force Museum there in Dayton, Ohio, which was amazing to be having this wonderful catered dinner under the wings of these aircraft in this huge hangar. That was quite the experience.
And that, if you've never been, that is a phenomenal facility.
Highly recommend.
And you'll spend a day there for sure.
Yes.
I can spend a whole weekend there and still not see everything. It's amazing.
I did spend a whole day there, and I still felt rushed.
I've been there 3 times now, and I still haven't seen everything.
Right.
And the last time, they had dinosaurs, so that was new.
That was weird.
And it seemed
very out of place. Like, they were very cool. It was it was teaching STEM stuff. It just seemed very out of place.
And the kids loved it.
The kids
which
loved
was
it.
that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I'm like, okay, the dinosaurs didn't fit in, but it's also a huge draw for the kids. So I'm like,
Yeah. And they were very, very thoughtful with their placement because they stuck it clear.
right, you had to
at the
walk
back,
past everything
at
else,
every other exhibit,
right,
everything.
to get to them. But so it was a little bit of an unusual discovery to have those there.
Right. Like,
But I get it, and it was a huge draw for the kids. I'm still not certain how to tie those together, or how to bring dinosaurs into aviation because short of,
pterodactyls, I guess.
right? Why can't you hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom? Because the P is silent.
Yeah. Full grown.
Yeah. So anyway, so then 2020 there was a pandemic. If you haven't heard, look it up. I'm sure there's information out there on it somewhere.
Somewhere you will find information about it. You will learn more than you ever wanted to know.
And so I was doing school programs. So one of the things in 2019, as a result of winning the award and merging and creating the Open Air Flight Club, was I was working with the Lamoni School, and we won a grant and got a simulator for the high school in Lamoni. And I was working with an after-school program through Dr. Bollinger had, what was that program that he ran?
AmeriCorps?
AmeriCorps, right?
Yeah,
so we were doing after-school program for kids through AmeriCorps. And Dr. Bollinger is one of our consultants. He's somebody that I met through Lamoni and all that. And so 2019, we were running a school program. We kind of created the Open Air Flight Club. And then 2020, there was the thing, right? So that happened. And so we kind of, like everyone else on the planet, we kind of had to regroup a little bit.
Just a little.
And
just a little.
So I published a second edition of the book. So I rewrote some things that I had learned along the way. I made a few corrections.
Yeah, we updated
did some updates.
Information, yeah.
I expanded a little bit. So other than just covering just flight training, I tried to branch out and cover all aviation trades, at least at an introductory level, to let people know there's a shortage of people to fill roles in a number of aviation trades. And a lot of people, because it's not taught in the public school system, they don't know about the trades necessarily, and they don't have any idea how to get into that trade.
Right.
There's not a clear-cut path, right, that people are aware of. And so we have a lot of information on that, and the scholarships, like the 99 scholarships, and a lot of the
there's loads of them out there.
Right, and
loads by all different organizations and individuals. Like they're out there. Sometimes you have to dig really hard to find them.
Yes, and so that's why I incorporate a lot of that in my book. So there's a lot of tips, and I went dead. Can you hear me now?
Oh, our battery died. So these are still live. So our video's still good.
Oh, our video's good.
Okay, well.
What kind of battery do we need in those?
I can go get a charging cable.
Yeah, go ahead. It'd be great. I will talk. I will entertain the masses while you get a charging cable. That's fine.
I will use my microphone.
Technical.
It's okay.
Technical anomalies.
We're learning.
No worries. We are learning, right? So this is how it goes, right? When you try new things, get messy, make mistakes, and regroup and get better. So we're doing really good. So in 2021, we started working on an introductory course to like aviation and the aviation trades for like an online course. And it was directed more towards teachers. And so we've completed that in 2022 and launched it. I think it was October, or the end of 2022, first part of 2023. I don't remember when the official launch date was now. It was so busy, and there was some rewrites, and there's so many other things going on at that time. It's all kind of a what do you say? It was a blur, but we launched that course, and so now we've had several teachers that have taken the course and gotten their certificate, so they can use that for their professional development credentialing. So that counts towards their teachers' credits, so for their teaching license. So that was a great benchmark or milestone for us to achieve. And since then, now we've been working towards doing audio and video podcasts and YouTube stuff. So we experimented a little. Hey, I'm back
again?
on. What?
You're live again?
I'm live again.
Yay!
So, hi, welcome back, everyone. I apologize for that. We had some technical challenges there.
So now we know.
A little technical anomaly.
We should probably plug it in rather than run off the battery.
Our battery died. Right? It happens.
It happens.
So
I'm going to take this opportunity to
go ahead.
To rearrange a little bit.
So let's see. 2022, we did the online course for teachers, professional development, and then we've talked about some of your accomplishments. A couple of others. So Elizabeth was originally a flight student of mine. She was one of the members that started with the Lamoni Flight Club and went along. And I have a rule that I don't date flight students. And
yes.
But then as time progressed, we got to know each other more, and then it was clear that we both had an interest in one another.
just a little.
So I pushed her to graduate and get her pilot's license so she would be finished.
Yes, there was that. Yes, I like this a little bit better.
You like
the
microphone better than me?
Well, I mean,
yep.
It's not a dynamic microphone, so
I'm more dynamic than your microphone.
This is
I
true.
have that going for me.
Yep.
So she is in her day job, right? So her trade, you're a pharmacy technician, right?
Yes.
And you have gotten your credentials along the way, and so you got your ADV, which is the highest level of training that you can take and highest certification you can get as a pharmacy technician, right?
Yes, and it's a fairly new thing. I think the first.
Well, you were one of the first, first ones in Iowa, and the first.
Yeah, I was one of the first ones in Iowa. One of the first 1,000 in the nation.
Wow. Yeah. So congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
So, and that allowed her to give shots. That allowed her to do. You did all kinds of things.
Yeah. I do immunizations. I do medication therapy management, billing and reimbursement, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. So, congratulations on that too.
Thank you.
And then she also just recently did a presentation and won an award because you have a food truck.
I do. I'm never bored.
Right?
I'm never bored.
The Eatery Island food truck, and she won. It was $1,000, right? That you
I did. Yeah. We got.
So you were second place.
We got second place for our business pitch for some improvements that we would like to make to the business to help grow it.
And that was a Red Rock area business development.
Yeah, the Red Rock entrepreneur pitch off, I think is what they call it, because it's like a Shark Tank kind of setup where you have all these businesses go in front of a panel of judges and present, this is my business, this is what we do, this is why we want you to invest in us.
And that seemed to work closely with kind of like the Chamber of Commerce and the Department of Economic Development, if I remember correctly.
Yes, definitely, for all of Marion County.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of some of your side. Some of your side hustle.
Yes, like I said, I'm never bored. Never
Uh,
bored.
I'm a bit of a polymath myself, so I have a number of interests and pursue a lot of things. We'll tell
This is
some
true.
interesting stories, and yeah, so we're not going to
Yeah.
get into most of that today, I don't think, but you never know.
Right.
So anyway, it's 2024, and right now we are between April and September. We are raffling off. We've been blessed to have the donation of a 1979 Mustang pace car.
Yeah, it's a really nice car.
It's a fox body, the four-eyed fox body, they call it. And our middle son says that it smells like the 70s.
I do have to agree with him. It does.
And
to us, that's not a bad thing.
It really does. It
him-
sounds like the 70s too.
It does.
And it drives like the 70s.
It does.
It's like a time machine.
Well, like we took it today to the breakfast that we attended.
Yep.
And in the back seat, it didn't have the shoulder straps. And Jonah was so confused. He's like, "Where's the seatbelt?"
We didn't know how that works.
I was like, "It's just a lap belt." What?
Right.
Yes.
And so we went to the Gold Star Museum in Iowa, which if you've never been and you are looking for some place to go,
It's very nice.
it's really well done.
It is. It really is.
It's the whole purpose is to honor veterans that have served in Iowa. And so whatever branch of service, right? So it's on an Army base, so Camp Dodge.
Right.
But whatever branch of service you've served in, if you served in Iowa or lived in Iowa, you are honored there in some way. And so they have airplanes, they have tanks, they have all the wars
they have everything.
are represented. They have mannequins and all kinds of stories that they...
And loads of documentation. Like they were talking about, there were 14? 17.
In the teens. I don't remember how many exactly now.
14 or 17 Revolutionary War veterans buried in Iowa.
In Iowa, yes.
So they served in the war and then moved here when they got older, even before Iowa's a state, but they're buried here.
I think it was 1855, so many years later.
Right.
Right?
And then it was like 200 and some for the Mexican-American War.
Yeah, it was a number of them. But was it 1850 or 1855?
The Iowa became a state?
No. That, and you may not have heard that spiel there, is when Iowa offered 160 acres to war veterans.
Yeah.
So a number of those people came to Iowa then to collect on their land, right? So if you wanted land, as a veteran, you could get 160 acres if you moved to Iowa at that time. And so that's how a lot of the Revolutionary War veterans, they came here and basically retired and got their land and then, sort of gifted it or pass it on down to their family.
Right.
So
I would be interested to know how much of that land is still in those same families.
That would be cool.
That would be really cool to find out.
I hope a lot of it is.
I hope so.
That's just what a tremendous opportunity for them. So we are raffling off this Mustang. It is it's near and dear to me because my first car in high school was a 79 Mustang pace car. And I did a lot of work on it. I bored it out 40 thousandths over. I put a racing cam in it.
Right.
And it would pass anything but a gas station, I would say. It was phenomenal. But then I joined the service. And when I got out, I went to college. And I couldn't afford to put gas in the dumb thing. Today, we went through, just going to Des Moines and back, we burned a half a tank of gas.
It might have been closer to 3/4 of a tank.
Yeah, we burned a lot of gas.
Done. It was...
So it isn't the most fuel efficient car that I've ever driven.
No, not really.
But it's full of nostalgia. And so I sold that car, and I've always sort of, I don't know if regret is the right word, but I've always missed it, right? Like it was just, it's your first car. So there's always a lot of emotion attached to your first car and all those experiences. a lot of my friends we'd ridden in it. We had all kinds of stories
The
in
memories.
there. A lot of memories in that car. So, and I last year I had an opportunity to get the car, and I got it. And then we kind of ran into some challenges with a flight simulator we've been working on,
Yeah.
and we needed to raise way more money than we anticipated. And so we needed $47,000
Yeah.
to complete the certified flight simulator for the school and all that kind of stuff. So we're like, well, how do we raise that kind of money? So we tried a couple of fly-ins and a couple other things. We raised a few $1,000s, so that was tremendous.
Yeah.
But to get to the $47,000 mark is just a lot. It's a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah.
fundraising is not.
And every little bit helps, and all the small steps count. It just takes
right.
a little
Whether you
bit
give
longer
50
to get
cents
there.
or $50, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
of that adds up, and we're getting there. So.
Yes.
I donated I decided we needed to raise the money, and the flight simulator was more valuable to me than the nostalgia of the car. So I got to share that with my kids and my family, and we've had a ton of fun with it. But I donated it to the nonprofit Open Air Education Organization, and we're raffling that off, and it will September 2nd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either the 1st or 2nd of
Yeah.
September. It's all on
Labor Day. It's. I think we're doing the drawing officially on Labor Day.
Right. So it's Memorial Day is today, and so Labor Day. So that's kind of the launch, if you will.
Right.
I mean, it really kind of started. We started launching it in April, but
Right.
it's been picking up steam as we go.
Right.
So I have a day job. She has a day job, and so. It's been picking up steam. We spend a lot of time running this organization on nights and weekends, and I take time off when I need to.
We've had to learn a lot of new skills.
A ton. Yep.
Audio
and video.
Yeah, like what we're doing here. Coding and website building and PR work, HR work.
For our course, for the open air, for the teacher's course that we did. Elizabeth did a lot of HTML coding, and she figured out how to make airplane.
Oh, the bullet points.
Bullet points, and that was really cool.
Well, especially since they're like, "How did you do that?"
Yeah, the organization we were working with when we created it, she was like, "How did you do that?" She's like,
"I've never seen that before. I didn't know you could do that."
Yeah,
like, I just coded it.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. So we have a lot of fun like that.
We do.
And then, so we're raffling off the Mustang. We need to raise the money for the flight simulator so we can do a lot of good with schools and with pilots, at the local airports. And
and we've got
down the road, I'd like to get it on a trailer so we can go to other events. I'm a CFII, so I could do. Instrument proficiency checks, IPCs they call it. For instrument pilots, I can do introductory lessons for students. So we can do a lot of good with the simulator. Kids. So we were at the Fly Iowa Air Show.
In Knoxville this past fall. Yeah.
Right. I was awarded a book for the Fly Iowa channel. Not a book, a coat. My free $1,000 coat.
Yeah, your free $1,000 jacket. Yes.
So it was a free jacket, a leather bomber pilot jacket that I got. The A1, actually. Fighter pilot jacket that I got for flying to every airport and going to every aviation museum in Iowa. And so that was over a accumulation of a few years. And it was like 130 places in total.
Yeah, your book had airports in it that weren't open anymore that you had been to.
Yes, I've been flying. So I've been flying for 25 years, and I've been to airports that are now closed.
Yeah, aren't in the new
several
books,
of them that are no longer even available. So I've been places that people can no longer go.
Correct. Yes.
Which basically just makes me older than. I'd like to admit.
You had a ton of fun getting that free $1,000 jacket, and I had a ton of fun going on some flights with you.
Yeah, you did. That was a lot.
We went to some pretty cool airports.
We did. We got some pretty cool. There was one airport where the hangar was so dilapidated, but it was overgrown with raspberries
Oh, they were so good.
inside of the hangar, and it was
They were
like,
so good.
was it like the middle of July, right, when we were there, or first part of August?
I think it was the 4th of July. Or was it?
Sometime around there? I don't remember the exact date now, but the raspberries were good, and we're like, okay, well, this is a public airport, and
Or was it?
like the hangar door was like missing. The roof was all caved in, and so you could just walk in, and there was raspberries. Like the whole hangar was full of raspberries, and so I'm like, well,
Yeah,
I mean, they're just sitting here,
right?
so we helped
They were
ourselves
really
to
good.
some. We ate some
They were really
right off the plant. It was delicious.
good. That was a really nice grass strip. Where was
Yeah, it
I
was.
can't remember where that was.
Oh, Adele, not Adele.
I feel bad.
I have to go back and look at my book now. I don't remember off the top. You put me on the spot.
I know, and
that wasn't on my notes. See, I've got all the notes here that we have to stick to the script. You get off script, then we don't know.
Oh goodness,
I
feel bad for not remembering either.
Um,
I just remember the raspberries. That's all I think about.
so I mean, when in Rome, right? So when you
Right,
land in an
right.
airport, right? It's for those who haven't been to small grass strips or small airports in rural communities. Often there's nobody there, so you land there and you're kind of fend for yourself, right? So the
Yeah.
building was locked.
And
I didn't have
it
a
was
code or a
tiny.
key, and it was tiny, but I didn't have a code or key to get in. So we're like, well, what do we do? So, you just kind of explore. So you walk
Yeah,
around. It's like,
yeah.
well, like I said, this hangar was dilapidated. The roof was caved in. The door was missing. It's full of raspberries. And I'm like, well, there's nobody here.
Yeah, it was like lunchtime. We didn't have lunch. We didn't bring lunch. So we're like, yep.
So we're like, well, there's raspberries.
It's raspberries.
And they were delicious. I'm like, and so we actually later met the person who like maintains that airport at the awards ceremony when I got my jacket. He was so happy we're there, and he was like, yeah, I'm glad you found the raspberries.
I think we even made a video about picking the raspberries. We're like, look, we found all the raspberries.
We did, yes, yeah. So I think that's just on our social media. But yeah, it's so Open Air has a Facebook, Instagram, all the things.
Yes.
And then I've got my personal LinkedIn. We don't have a separate one for Open Air. Maybe we should do one.
We should.
It's social media has become such a rabbit hole that you could just go down.
Yes.
I have not delved. I delved into TikTok for a short period of time. We did some helicopter takeoff videos and some other aviation cool kind of things. But you can just spend so much time doing the social media and the TikToks and everything else. I'm like, is it really the best use of our time?
Yeah. And when you start adding more and more of the different platforms, it becomes a lot to manage.
Right. So I haven't yet.
And,
we'll see.
yeah.
Maybe that will come. I don't know.
Maybe.
Give us your thoughts, right? So like, comment, share. If you have ideas or you want to see us do something.
Right.
Then,
or if there's a topic. Like
either
certain topics to discuss.
So either support us in what we're doing and give us your opinion whether we should or shouldn't do it. We appreciate it. And we're always open to new ideas, right? And so
right.
And speaking of ideas, that's a great way to segue into sort of a trending topic. And I've been approached by a couple of people that really want to learn to fly that have been diagnosed with ADHD. And so it kind of leads to the question, can I fly if I have ADHD? I mean, I don't have ADHD, but can a person fly if they have ADHD?
Yeah, that is a really common question.
So the shorter answer is maybe.
Right. Well, because it's not the diagnosis that would prevent you from doing it. It's certain medications.
Right. So having ADHD does not preclude you from flying. You there's no
Right.
There's no barrier from having ADHD to being able to fly. In fact, I know several pilots that have ADHD that have even written and spoken about it and work with it all the time. And it's in some ways it's kind of a superpower, right? So they can
Right.
do
Yeah,
things.
in some ways it's an advantage.
Definitely an advantage for them, and they would argue that having ADHD makes them a better pilot than some others. And so I don't know about that, but I can tell you that having ADHD in its own right does not prevent you from being able to get a pilot's license. However, and this is where it gets tricky, certain medications. So if you go to the FAA.gov website, you can look up a list of what they call blacklisted medications. And if you are taking medications, I know Adderall is one that's a fairly common medication that's
Right.
given for people with ADHD. And most of the stimulants, right, Ritalin, Adderall, you know them better than I
Oh,
do.
yeah, probably
But
Vyvanse and
right,
Concerta and
but most of those are blacklisted by the FAA. So if you're taking those medications, that could prevent you
yes.
from being able to get a pilot's license. So there are other types of medications that you could take. I don't know if guanfacine or Intuitive
I don't know.
is one of them.
I don't know. Like it is beneficial to know what is on that list because if I remember right, Sudafed is on that list.
It is.
So
So if you have a
it's
cold
not
and you're taking Sudafed, by all rights, right, you should not be flying.
right. So it's not just what people would consider hardcore medications or
Right.
stronger medications.
Yep.
There are a lot. I think probably
Right.
Benadryl, Dramamine are on there.
I'm sure NyQuil's on there.
I'm sure NyQuil is on there. Yes.
If
So-
for no other reason, you have to have a blood alcohol content of less than 0.04 to be
This
illegal
is
to
true.
fly. And
Yes,
so
this is true.
NyQuil would probably
NyQuil would probably
probably hurt you in that
not
regard.
work out for you. No, no.
But so yeah, so the FAA does have a website about medication. So if you're taking a medication, and that's with our family and with your trade being a pharmacy technician, these are conversations that we have often. My youngest son has been diagnosed with ADHD. Our middle son has autism and ADHD symptoms, as maybe as a result of the autism or
Right.
and we often have the conversation: how much is nature versus nurture, right? So,
Right.
and that's we're not going to delve into that in this video, but it's a phenomenal discussion.
It really is.
How much people learn from different behaviors or being around different people that have behaviors,
and just different coping mechanisms and how that can present itself as these symptoms, if you want to use air quotes, symptoms of ADHD.
You can do that. We're on video, so you can do air quotes.
I could do air quotes.
Now, on the podcast, when they're not watching the video, you have to tell them that we're doing air quotes. But on the video portion of it, you don't.
See, it gets a little confusing when we're doing both.
It does. We do both at the same time. It's just an efficient, because we have the microphones and the camera, so it's kind of an efficient use of our time.
Right.
But we'll see how it goes.
Like we said, we're learning. We're trying new things.
We are.
Take
chances,
and
so
make mistakes. Get messy.
Yes. So ADHD is a discussion that we have, with our own children. And, I'm a Gen Xer, so I can do anything with nothing. And so I was raised where you just go outside and ride your bike until the streetlights come on, and then you come inside. And I drank from the garden hose, and my parents. I don't think my parents ever knew who I was until bedtime, and
maybe not even then.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I walked to school and home to school, uphill both ways,
Oh yes, yes.
barefoot, and it snowed year round
Oh
back
yeah,
then,
yeah.
and everything else. But it was definitely a different time.
Yes.
And as a Gen Xer, we learned coping skills because we didn't want to be in trouble with our parents because the only worst thing than being caught by a teacher who back when I was in school, they still had the principal had a paddle.
Yeah.
He had a boat oar with holes drilled in it in his office. So if you got sent to the principal's office, it was for real serious.
For real serious.
Right? It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't they're going to call your parents. First of all, if they did call your parents, you knew you were double dog going to get in trouble.
Yeah, you may not live through the night. Yeah.
So, but but in all seriousness, no, we learned sort of coping skills. We hung out with other kids and we helped each other. We made fun of each other. We picked on each other. We played games and sports and hung outside. We didn't have there's no video evidence of anything we did. Right. So I have plausible deniability.
Thank goodness. I don't know what I would do if there was video evidence.
I feel bad for the youth today because they can't do a lot of the stuff that I may or may not have heard of other kids doing at my age.
Yeah.
Because there's a risk of it being everybody has everybody has a camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
So I believe that because of my upbringing and just the general upbringing of most Gen Xers, we develop coping skills, and I think there's a lot of value in talking about your issues to your friends and your family. Find a trusted teacher or a trusted confidant. I talk to our neighbors. I'd go over to my neighbors had food and they would give us Clarabelle. She lived up the street. She was a nice little old lady. She was a widow, and she always had candy. And I would tell her so many stories and talk to her. And she was so kind. She would feed me, and so there was always good conversation and food. So survival tactics, right? So Gen Xers know how to survive. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
And
yes.
Right. We're the what do they call it? The skipped generation or the forgotten generation or whatever.
Generation.
Yeah. And it was true, right? Our parents forgot we existed until the streetlights come on. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're our kid.
You
take a bath and go to bed, or you're in trouble."
Yeah. You're filthy. Go take a bath.
Or do your chores.
Yeah.
And my parents were great. It was funny. But it was a different time. It was definitely a different time. Lots and lots of stories there too. I'm going to try to avoid getting into those rabbit holes today in the recording here. But so the ADHD, the final sort of consensus on that is whatever medications you're taking with that, or whatever treatments or programs that you're working through. The FAA website has a lot of really good information about what medications and programs are acceptable or not acceptable. And you can talk with your doctor. So doctors also know or can lead you in the right direction. You can do a lot of research. You can Google it. You can WebMD it. It's not cancer.
No, it's not. And I think one of the major things with being diagnosed with the ADHD, whether you're medicated or not, you keep hitting your glasses on
I do. I need to put a glasses guard. So these are new glasses. So my other ones broke yesterday, and so I'm wearing new glasses. So I'm still getting used to them.
But anyway, like what I'm saying with whether you're medicated or not, if you're diagnosed with ADHD, it really, really boils down to you have to be honest with yourself about what kind of coping skills you have and how you can manage things in your life, because flying can be very stressful. There can be a lot of things happening all at once, and if you are not good with a lot of things coming at you at once, whether you have ADHD or not, even you have to be honest with yourself. And
And I
know.
agree with that. I also believe, right? So aviation is a learned skill, right? So none of us are born, uh, other than the Wright brothers, arguably, and maybe Charles Lindbergh because he was largely self-taught as well.
Yeah, yeah,
But there are a handful of people over the course of the 100 and plus years since 1903, so 101 years, 121 years of
yeah,
aviation.
yeah.
Um,
Older than you,
that it is older than me, just barely.
just barely.
And so there's a handful of people that sort of are self-taught. So other than that, or either self-taught or just born with innate ability,
Yeah,
Bob Hoover was one person that just had that innate ability. Arguably the greatest pilot who ever lived, and phenomenal. May he rest in peace. And but but aviation being a learned skill, you can also learn those coping skills,
yeah, yeah,
right? And so there are people that hire coaches, there are people that hire therapists.
yeah,
There are some flight instructors have different techniques, so you can
yeah.
always flight instructor shop, right? So if one flight instructor doesn't work for you, I'd be happy to recommend one, or
Right, right.
I can have conversations with your flight instructor to offer some of the techniques that have worked for me,
Right.
and so maybe they can incorporate that in there. So I'm always willing to help, and I'm always willing to help other pilots and other flight instructors succeed, right? So I believe we all succeed together, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I believe in a hand up, not a hand out. And, we all help each other succeed,
Yeah.
and we all succeed together, and it's just a better place.
Yeah. And we talk about that with our kids too, about we don't allow the word can't in our house. They're
Right.
not allowed to say I can't do that.
Right. It's hard,
It's hard.
right?
And we talk about the neuroplasticity, which is kind of what you're saying. You can learn anything.
Correct.
You can rewire your brain to learn anything. Is it going to be hard? Yep.
Some things are harder than others.
Some
And
things are harder
it
than
depends on
others.
your learning style. It depends
Yep.
on the teaching style. And so there's good ways and bad ways to learn it. Some people are slower students than others, right?
Right.
But yeah, neuroplasticity is
It's a fun word to say.
it really is. But it's an interesting topic of conversation, right? Because the nature versus nurture, right?
Right.
So ADHD is hyper overdiagnosed in our society.
Yes.
And there are people that want the ADHD diagnosis because they believe that they need or they want the medications that give them certain benefits or certain feelings and emotions.
Or even the ability to use it as an excuse.
Right.
That happens a lot too.
Victim mentality is common. Some people really have ADHD and need, right? It's emotional support or physical support because they have anxieties and other things revolve around that. And so they need the medications in order to help them cope with things. And I get that. But sometimes that's the easiest way to people are going to shoot us, right? So we're going to get a lot of negative feedback on this because I know this is a hot topic.
It is, and I think having honest conversations about it, and we're not being judgmental. Like I'm not saying absolutely do not medicate yourself or absolutely do medicate yourself. Like I said, you have to be honest with yourself. 2
of our children have ADHD, so we live this every day, right?
Yes.
And so we struggle with it. Do we medicate them? Do we not medicate them? One of our children are, one of them are not.
Right.
And we tried stimulants. We did not have a good experience with that, right? And that was just our circumstances. So we went with basically it's a guanfacine, which is or Intuitive. It was a bad blood pressure medication that they've discovered worked well to kind of slow children down so they could function and learn in that environment.
Right, to slow down the hyperactivity.
Right. And so we have explored the dynamics of this. one of the things that we found through a number of articles that we've read, and there's trials and tests and studies. There's all kinds of information out there.
Oh my
Right? Just
goodness.
Google it. But
Yes, but like set aside a whole weekend to go down that rabbit hole because it's extensive.
right,
It's extensive.
but technology addiction
Yes.
can present itself. So in kids, right? So kids that watch their iPad or they have a phone or they play video games and watch television all the time and have a technology addiction. Technology addictions can present themselves in symptoms that are very akin to ADHD-like symptoms.
Yes.
And so how much of that is going on in our society, right? We've seen that with our kids. So we try to limit our kids to 30 minutes of technology time, but they'll wake up in the morning, can I have my technology time? The two things I hear most from our children are, I'm hungry, when's lunch, or when's the next meal, whatever the next meal is.
And can I use my electronics?
It's like we're sitting at breakfast, and they're like, when's lunch?
What's for lunch?
We're still sitting at the table with
you just ate a plate full of pancakes. How can you be thinking about lunch?
They're like, well, I'm just planning my day. I'm like, wow. Yeah.
Okay.
They're growing.
But they do call me out because they're like, well, you think about lunch all the time. I'm like, I have to because you're going to ask
somebody
me
has
what
to buy the groceries and make the food.
I'm like, I have to plan ahead so that you get to eat.
We know we're going to have to, although I tell my children that I know the answer to every question they're ever going to ask before they ever ask it.
Yep.
And the answer is no.
Yep. This is true. This is the truest statement that I've heard. Yes.
Yes. And they detest that remark, but they know it's true.
Oh, they do. Yes.
But so yes. So it's something that we are hyper aware of because of our world and our environment. I see it with a lot of pilots. I see the whole gamut of people that take medications because they want to, but don't necessarily need to. And I see people that take medications because they need to, but they don't necessarily want to. There's people in the middle. Can you learn other coping skills? Again, some people, depending on your life and your environment and nature versus nurture, yes, you can, right? Well, neuroplasticity. So it is possible.
Yes.
It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be, a struggle. There are mountains to get over, right? And so to be able to give up one thing and learn something else, you have to go through a very uncomfortable territory to get there. And nobody likes to go through that uncomfortable territory. Right. It's a challenge. Right?
Well, and one of your favorite sayings is, unless you're uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Right.
Like, if you're growing as a person, it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy.
I read a lot of books, and I watch a lot of videos on like Tony Robbins, Dave Ramsey, Robert Kiyosaki, Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon Hill. I've seen the movie Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
And so I've read a lot of people that are inspirational, financial gurus and that sort of thing. And so one of them, I don't remember off the top of my head which one of them is, everything that you want is on the other side of fear. I think that's Tony Robbins, but I don't remember.
That sounds very Tony Robbins.
Right.
That sounds very Tony Robbins.
And so...
and it's true. It's very true.
And it really is, right? So you have to go to do that learning curve, right? And to be able to build and grow, you have to go through uncomfortable territory, right? And so that's difficult, and it's just a mindset they have to get over. People have anxieties about different things.
Right.
I know my daughter has anxieties about certain things, especially friends and teenage girls, and I get why.
Yeah.
But it's important to realize that it's attainable. Right. And you have to, and another thing in our society I think is hard for people is like just some honest reflection and introspection, right?
Right. And being willing to have those hard conversations with other people, like, because I think a lot of the time when we get into those anxiety modes, we feel like we're the only ones who've ever felt that way ever, and we're weird and something's wrong with us. When in reality, I mean, that's undeniable. But in reality, everybody has felt that way at some point
Right.
or another, and we don't always realize that. So you can say, well, I have this test coming up, and I know I'm going to pass it, but I'm terrified to take it.
And
And everybody's felt that way. Everybody has felt
so
that
the
way.
interesting thing is, you mentioned a good point. Having these conversations is part of the coping skills, right? Learning as a society to be able to talk to your flight instructor or your colleagues, your fellow pilots, your
Right,
coworkers, your fellow students, your family members,
yeah,
your friends,
family, yeah.
even your neighbors, right? And be able to have these sort of difficult, awkward, challenging conversations, because you get feedback, and the more times you have those same conversations with people, you're going to get different parts of feedback, and you're going to start putting together little. Everybody knows something you don't, right?
Right.
But
right.
it's always different. It's not the same thing that you don't know.
Right.
Everybody knows something unique that you don't know. And so by having more conversations with more people, you can, by proxy, help build some of those coping mechanisms, or learn different facets of your condition or how it's perceived by others.
Right. Right.
And then develop ways to deal with it, right? And so medication is one way. It's not the only way. And medication can be either a permanent solution, or it can be a temporary solution until you
Right.
build the other coping skills.
Right.
Or maybe you don't need medication at all.
Yep.
And so, everybody's circumstances are unique. So and like Elizabeth said, we're not judgmental. We understand. We're trying to have these conversations, though, and I think it's important to listen to them. And so please provide us feedback of things that you think. We'd love to hear your stories,
Right. Right.
that sort of thing. Moving on, a couple other things that I wanted to talk about. We just did an epic spring break
Yes.
journey.
Epic is the word for it.
Word,
all in capital letters.
Yeah. So I've traveled extensively. I'm retired military, and so I've been to more than half of the United States, and I've been to, I don't know, a couple of dozen countries overall, and so I have a lot of travel experience, and aviation and travel obviously seem to go hand in hand, right? So one of the perks or benefits, or I guess side benefits or results of aviation is travel, right? So you're going from point A to point B.
Right.
You do it in an airplane. It's kind of a time machine. You can do it a lot faster.
Right.
And get back and that sort of thing. So, but we went to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yes.
So the airport identifier there is LIT, which I think is cool because it stands for literature, or it's actually Little Rock.
Right.
Little, LIT, little. It's just a little first part of little. But I liked literature because we went and saw the Bill Clinton Presidential Library.
Oh yeah, we did.
And there was, in front of that, they have a park, and they have a bunch of globes that all have a theme, and it was really, really cool. It was really thought provoking.
Yeah, there were. Oh goodness.
Couple of dozen.
Yeah. Just all.
And all the kids had a favorite one, so they all gravitated towards one that sort of fit their personality.
Yeah, there was one that had like all the animals on the continents. Yep. There were ones that were like
they delved into
recycling.
They delved into recycling and pollution, and
I think there was one on women's rights.
Yep. There was some in fashion, and there's all kinds of them that had different themes. It was really cool. And one of the things we learned there, so from my understanding, the Clinton Presidential Library was part of the railroad, a train station, and the railroad property and stuff that went through there. That the railroad was a big deal. Obviously, it still is in some regards, but so there was some financial struggles in that particular, and so it's kind of a rundown, dilapidated, unused, bypassed, sort of discarded railway yard, right?
Yeah.
and
there was
tracks and stuff that
that
were
really
unused.
big station
Right.
right across the street.
And so they repurposed that as part of the Clinton Library. So I thought that was really cool. And
I wish we would have been able to go in, but we were there on a Sunday,
yeah, they weren't open.
so they were
And
not.
I was
open.
cool with that, but excuse me. And I'm not getting the and I probably wouldn't lean towards politically. I wouldn't necessarily lean towards the Clintons, but I can appreciate what they did with the building and that they have their presidential library there, and the kids thought it was really cool.
It was a really cool building. Just
Right.
looking at it from the outside, it was a very cool building.
So leaving politics aside, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
But Little Rock has a lot of other stuff there as well. So there's hot springs, and that I don't know. It's like an hour drive from Little Rock.
Yeah, it was like an hour southwest
Right.
of Little Rock.
And a couple of other things we didn't make it to, but there's a Museum of Discovery there that looks phenomenal.
Yeah. It
But
looked really, really cool.
we didn't have the time, so we did 11 states in 9 days. So we were on a pretty tight schedule. We'll tell that whole story over the course of several podcasts and videos because it was a lot
Yes.
to unpack.
Yes, it was.
So
the coolest thing though I think about Little Rock was that we learned about the Little Rock Nine.
right. And so the high school there,
Yeah.
segregation was a big deal in the South,
Right.
and Little Rock, Arkansas, was sort of the heart.
It was like the epicenter of desegregation in schools.
Right. And so that did not go well at the time. And you did a little more research on this when you found it than I did.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, the NCAAP
Yes.
put out applications for students, Black students, to basically volunteer to go and become segregated or desegregated into an all-white school. And they chose 9 students, and they would all meet at
A lady's house. I don't remember her name now.
Betsy Davis, wasn't it?
Yes.
They would meet
Betsy
at her
Davis.
house, and she would drive them there.
We actually went to her house, or the location of where her house was,
Yeah.
and it was 2 miles from the school. It was a
Yeah,
fairly
yeah.
significant distance.
It was quite a ways away.
They couldn't really walk to school from there,
Right.
so that she had to drive them to school.
But they all went together as a
Yep.
group. I'm assuming as an act of solidarity,
I would get right.
right?
Safety in numbers kind of thing, but
Correct.
it didn't go well. They were harassed by the students.
They called it, like the governor of Arkansas called in the National Guard and barred them from entering the school.
Right.
It was a very, very, very big deal.
Right, and so the federal government
It had to step in.
it invoked the federal military to step in, and so there was almost a war between the state. So the state sort of controls the National Guard, and the federal
Right.
government controls the military, or the army per se.
Yeah.
And so it almost got to the point where they were pitting the state versus the federal government.
Right.
And some of the details are foggy because, like I said, she was more well researched on it than I was when we went into this. But the governor, so the kids were picked on. It was a huge challenge.
And it's crazy to think that these kids ranged from 14 years old to 18 years old.
Right.
And went through that.
And they were all, exceptional students from their own right. So they had little plaques that told a little bit about the students, and they had some quotes from them, and so they were all good students, presumably good people, right? And
Right.
so, they went through a selection process and everything. So it was just a really interesting time in our history that happened. But the governor got so mad about all this, he shut down the school for a year.
The next school year, he just shut the schools down for a year.
He's like, I'm done. I'm not dealing with this
Nope,
anymore.
we're not
He just
doing it.
shut her down. So, you talk about, Arkansas gets a reputation for being in the South, and their kids aren't as smart, whatever, which isn't true. But some of the kids during that year, when they shut the school down for a year, right? We saw what happened in the pandemic in 2020.
Right.
When you shut the schools down for a year, kids lose a lot.
They do.
In 1 year of school that they don't have.
They do.
They miss a ton of information and stuff. So that sort of makes sense. And it was, but so, and they had a, monument there. They had all these kids were sort of immortalized as statues, and then they had plaques that talked about them, and they had quotes from them and stuff. What an interesting time in our history. We went to that high school and saw it as it is. There's a gentleman there that gave us T-shirts for visiting. He just happened to be there, and he saw us there with our kids, and he thought that was
a janitor or
some sort of faculty of some sort
worker there on the grounds.
And he just happened to have T-shirts in his truck. He's like, "Hey, I want you guys to have these T-shirts." I'm like, "I'll pay you for them." He goes, "Nope, see ya," and he just drove off. And I'm like, that was the most bizarre thing. It was really cool, but he thought it was cool that we were there and teaching our kids. And what a phenomenal, education that we were able to provide on this. It just happened to be one of the stops on our journey. And as it turns out, our oldest daughter ended up the week after we got back, a week after spring break. They started talking about that in history, and she's like, "Yeah, I actually have pictures of the high school and the kids on my phone." And so that was. Talk about relatable and timely.
And the kids were really engaged with that, because we listened to videos in the car because the kids couldn't all watch them because they're on their phones.
Every stop on our journey, we tried to preclude that with some sort of video or informational, like leading
documentary
up to,
kind of thing.
Leading up to just informational preparation leading up to our next stop, so they had some context when we got there, and
that whole situation just kind of blew their minds. They're like, just because their skin was a different color, people didn't want them to go to school,
right? Like they picked on them because they were black kids. Like they weren't mean, they weren't bad kids, they weren't in trouble, they weren't criminals, they weren't dumb, they didn't have a disease, or they didn't have mental challenges, or all these other things that you would maybe associate with the reason that kids get picked on. And no, they didn't have any of that. They just happened to have a different pigment to their skin than the other kids. But in that time period in our history, people thought differently. And I think largely in Iowa, we don't really think that. Like, that's not really a consideration. Like, people are people generally in Iowa.
Yes.
There are, I think, pockets where there's still some sort of racism and segregation in some ways, but I think it's in northern states generally, it's not very prolific. But in the South, there is still a lot of
tension.
There's I don't know how to describe it.
It's unspoken. It's
there are still mannerisms.
Yes.
Right? And that people have probably learned or just developed as part of their childhood and growing up and being in the South. But in the southern states, there was still a stigma around different races.
Yes.
And different types of people. And people would act differently in certain contexts around certain different types of people. And so does racism exist today in this country? Yeah, in some ways it does.
Yeah.
In a lot, and it's a really complicated, this gets over dramatized and over politicized, I think often, but I think it's a good conversation to really, to sit down and reflect
Right.
and have these conversations. There are elements where, people could learn to behave better or to recognize that how they think maybe is not, what's the word I'm looking for?
Appropriate.
Well, appropriate, right? But it's not. It's more subtle than that, though. It's like,
decent.
right?
Like just being a decent human being.
Like, even though they didn't do anything necessarily wrong, they weren't kind.
Yeah.
And so I think people could learn to just be more kind and more thoughtful and understanding, right? And so, but there are really deep-rooted issues in the South for a number of reasons.
Yes.
And both sides have been instigators, right? So there isn't one side versus another side that's the culprit. It's
right.
All of these little facets have all sort of developed over literally generations.
It's almost like gang wars kind of thing.
Kind of. You'll hear my glasses occasionally on the microphone. That's how I'm engaged. It was really interesting, right? So there was a lot of irregularities in the culture down there that the lay person that's not really paying attention wouldn't notice a lot of it. But as you start looking around and paying attention and talking to more locals, it becomes more pronounced. It's like, oh, yeah, there is an element of that here. And it's like, well, that's really interesting. And I don't understand why, And so I hope that continues to change and improve.
Yeah.
I think having these conversations and listening to these conversations and reflecting in a kind and respectful manner, right? So one side, both sides have a story to tell, and they've formed their opinion based on stories that they've heard or experiences that they've had.
Their own perceptions, their perceived.
It's just both sides are justifiable from their perspective, and so we have to look at the vantage point of the people involved, right, to really learn about how we got where we're at, and then unraveling that is a series of conversations and levels of understanding that takes time to develop and learn and work through, and
it's not going to be easy.
Circling back to so politics and the media, social media, and arguments, and a lot of the things that happen for the sound bites or for the optics really aren't good solutions. They may highlight the problem. They hyperfixate on making a point. Whether it's a valid point or not is debatable, but then it doesn't really address all the other facets of it and have this conversation. I think that's where it's got to come down to organizations like Open Air and all of our members, and through podcasts and videos and events that we attend and interactions that we have with ourselves and other pilots. Another one that I've heard a lot about is female pilots, right?
Yes.
You can speak to this a little bit. Not to put you on the spot or anything, but
I wasn't expecting this. It is interesting.
Maybe we'll make that a topic for another podcast or another video, right?
That could actually be a really good topic.
Because I know, it used to be less than 5% of corporate pilots were female, and now it's over 7%. So there have become, in the last few years, because of STEM education, and I think a lot of changes in, women entering the workforce, and for a number of reasons, that has been changing. That number is growing, and I think people are generally viewing women pilots differently, but not in all places, right? So I
would agree with that.
I know women pilots that have made comments that I don't understand,
right,
how it happened, and I wasn't there, so it's all
Well,
hearsay. But
and again, it just boils down to having the honest conversations because we all make assumptions on what somebody meant or what somebody intended, and it's not always that way. Because I know you and I just even recently had an interaction with an older male pilot who believed that just because I was female, I had no idea what he was talking about.
yes,
So
yeah.
he's probably, he's like, you probably don't even know what a Cessna is. Yeah, I own a Cessna. So, I mean, and I don't, I think the issue becomes where, people get offended by that. Lots of women would be offended by that and just get really hurt by it and just be mad. And, you know, it is a little, I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't hurtful, that he thinks that I don't know. But at the same time, if I just choose to get offended by that and be hurt by that and let it affect me, then, I'm part of the problem too.
So there's a concept, or there's a what do you call that? So there's an element of called the illusion of knowledge, right?
Yes.
And so people make assumptions based on their experiences, right? And so
Yes.
if they're in aviation circles that are only male dominated and they're only interacting with other male mechanics and other male pilots in whatever circles they're in, then their experiences, women, the women in their lives, their wives, their girlfriends, the other companies they work with or whatever, women don't know a lot about aviation in their circles.
Right.
They
Right.
just carry that assumption into the rest of the world that no women know anything about aviation. And it's like, I have met women that know far more about
Right.
aviation and flying in
Right.
airplanes than I do.
Right. And it even gets more complex than that because, we always talk about battle of the sexes and, men are like Mars, women are like Venus kind of things where men and women just don't always see eye to eye just because of the way our brains are wired. And it's a natural thing and it's just something that we all have to learn to be open and honest about and have the hard conversations about
Right.
and be willing to find the middle ground. Like,
Yes.
I understand that when I say this, this is what it means in your brain, but that's not what I actually meant.
But yeah, so people make assumptions. I think it's really good to correct people when they've made an incorrect assumption, but you have to do it in a kind manner, right? Because their experiences and their assumptions are that this is so.
Right.
If you don't approach it with a level of grace and kindness that understands that they didn't necessarily do it. Now, sometimes people do it on purpose, but I think that's exceedingly rare.
Yeah.
That people are intentionally trying to be hurtful when they make an incorrect assumption based on their experiences. So I think it's important to be kind and to approach that with a lot of grace, and that's something that Elizabeth is really good at. Is she's taught me a lot about kindness and grace.
You're very sweet.
But I there are people that are too quick to be offended because a guy made a comment, but from his vantage point, right, he didn't make that comment to be hurtful. That's just his experience.
Right. And
so to correct him, but you can't expect when you correct somebody based on their life experiences, you can't expect them to just immediately go, "Oh, I was wrong."
And it's better from here on
because they're hardwired based on their experiences. So when you say, "Oh no, your experiences are wrong," and this is actually how it really is, it takes a minute for that, right? Yep. So he's got to relearn new experiences based on new information.
Right.
That doesn't come instantaneously. That takes a lot of patience and grace and understanding, and that's part of the whole learning curve.
Right.
And so sometimes when that criticism is harsh and abrupt, right, then it just perpetuates the problem.
Yeah.
Right. From the other, and then and maybe even creates a new problem. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I do think that would be an interesting topic though to talk about issues that women face in aviation.
Just talk overall. About women. I think
I think you would enjoy that. I think you would also be terrified.
I could do your mama jokes or something.
You know what? I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that. I
Um,
would be okay with that.
so anyway, I don't have a lot else to cover today. We've covered a lot. This has been a lot of territory.
It has, and that's usually how our conversations go.
I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes.
And so, openairflightclub.com is our website.
Yep.
You can get our book on Amazon. It's Open
Yep.
Air Flight Club is the book. You get it on Amazon.
Yep, we've got the raffle going on. You can
Yes.
find that on social media. We've got some pop-ups now on the website that I just built today. We go.
She didn't just build the website today. She
No,
just built the
no.
pop-up
Just-
for the
just the
website
pop-up.
today.
You know,
Right?
that was.
You
that was
are
an
amazing,
No,
but
No.
you're not quite that amazing.
I'm okay with that. So yes, we
Just
do have
fair.
that. We use a company called Zephy
Yep.
to do that. So if you need to search for that,
Yep, they've
you'll
done a
find
great
it
job.
there. So
So yeah, please like, share, donate, send it to
give
your
us
friends
feedback.
and family.
give us feedback. Like,
Um,
what do you want to hear about? What do you want to learn?
But that 79 Mustang pace car it's a 79. So 29 is going to be the 50th anniversary of the
Yeah.
79 pace car. And so the value of that car is just skyrocketing, right? So they were selling for $5 or $6 grand pre-pandemic, right? In
Right.
like 2018 and 2019. And they've gone up to, same car now is 10 or 12 grand.
Right.
And I've seen them go for 22 to 25, same or similar conditions. And
Yeah.
really nice ones are going for $40,000, $50,000. Right. So these cars are skyrocketing in value. This particular pace car is all original. So there's a lot of value for the people because a lot of them have been modified. That was just a big thing in the 70s and 80s is to modify your cars to have the coolest hot rod or whatever. And so being an all original, I think brings a ton of value. It's a 302 automatic. Most of the pace cars, well, first of all, 10,000 were made. Of those, most of them were 2.3 liter 4-cylinder turbo with a manual transmission. And so to have a 302 in it was rare, and an automatic was rare. And so this is a pretty rare car, even for the pace cars. Of the 10,000 made, I estimate from a number of people that I've talked to, about half of them have been scrapped or racked out or totaled out, and otherwise sort of decommissioned, right? And so you've got less than 5,000 cars out there probably on as a good estimate.
Yeah.
And not very many of them are 302 automatics, and even fewer have all the original stuff, the original radio and all the original things. So it's a pretty good find, and what a great value, to get it raffle tickets. $50 for a ticket, and what a great value. They're limited to 2,500 tickets. Yeah. So if you're very good at numbers and odds, your odds are really good of being able to be a winner. And so $50 a ticket, or you can get 5 for $200. So the people that are giving a little more, we're trying to give them a little incentive.
Yeah.
And we really want somebody to win this car and be able to take it, enjoy it, and have fun with it, and realize the value in it. And we really hope to raise that money for our flight simulator and our scholarships and other things that we do in our program. So this is a win-win, tremendous opportunity. And so thank you for your time. Thanks for watching and listening.
Yeah.
And next time, in the next episode, I'm going to dive into how to learn to fly for free.
For free?
Yes.
This is intriguing.
It is. And a couple of other things that I wrote down. I got to refer to my notes now.
Notes. Rattle the paper so everyone knows you.
Oh yes. So General Schneider wrote the foreword to my book, and he passed away unexpectedly. Although he was in his 80s, so I don't know how unexpectedly it was. But he was a really healthy, ambitious, motivated, hardworking guy, and just happened to fall. And unfortunately, it was just a set of circumstances, and then he passed away. So
Yeah.
that was what, February of 22, 23,
3.
23. So a little
Yeah.
over a year ago. And he's dearly missed. What a great person and great personality, and just a great man. Um, and so we'll delve into that. We'll talk about General Snyder and as a pilot highlight. And I think for our travel, we'll talk about New Orleans.
Yep, that was one of the stops on our trip.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we'll get to delve into that. And so tying aviation to travel and talking about some of the things that we do with aviation, some of the things that you can do with aviation, and
Right,
or just
right.
travel, right? So you can drive, you can fly commercially, you can fly your own airplane. So
Right.
we delve into all that. Like we're trying to be
Inclusive?
yeah, inclusive and all inclusive is a good term. I was going to say encompassing, but I think inclusive fits it better. And let's see, what else did I write here?
You wrote it really small, so I'm having
I
a hard time
did.
reading.
I got to.
Can I fly if I'm colorblind?
Oh yes. So I've had several students. Hey, I don't have my glasses. I don't have my glasses on the microphone. I'm not wearing them. So
Yay!
lesson learned. I've had several students. I've had a couple that were colorblind. I've had people ask me if they're colorblind, and our middle son is potentially colorblind. The eye doctor wouldn't test him because he didn't want him to have the stigma or
The potential loss of
opportunity.
employment opportunities,
Right.
specifically.
So having a diagnosis apparently could preclude you from certain things, and so he's like, well, I don't want to assign that if we don't know, because if
Right.
he diagnoses him, then he'll have that on his record, and he wanted to do that for him. I was like, well, we kind of want to know. It's like, well, there's ways you can find out without
Yeah.
having an official diagnosis, and then there's ways to cope with it, right? So ways you can learn to manage it or deal with it. And so the FAA is kind of so anyway. We'll delve into that more next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's all for now, and we'll see you in the open air.
See you in the open air.
Thanks. Bye now.